Hi everyone and welcome to SQL Server video tutorial. In this tutorial we'll study about pivot operator and generate a cross-tab report with a single query. First, let's discuss about the basic concepts, what is pivoting, why we use it, and what could be the possible scenarios we can face. First of all, what is pivoting? The basic and simple definition of pivoting is to turn unique values from a state of rows to a state of columns as an output with some aggregating values. Basically, it helps you to get a cross-tab report in results as an output. We have two scenarios, or you can say we have two situations. First is where we will implement a pivoting on fixed or constant columns, and in the second scenario, we will generate columns dynamically. But in this tutorial, we will only talk about pivoting on fixed and constant columns. Okay, let's take an example. If you see on the left side, we have a table named view sales with three columns: salesperson, city, and sale amount. If you see, we have three salesperson, Alvin, Amanda, and Eric, and they're selling in four different cities: Chicago, Seattle, Boston, and LA. If you just look at the table, for example, Alvin, he has a sale in LA 1400 as well as 1000. So for example, let's say we want to write a query that gives us an accumulated sale for each salesperson by city. And to achieve this, we need to apply a group by with an aggregate function of sum, and that you can see over here, that we apply a group by query with a sum on sales amount that will give you an accumulated sales amount. So if you see over here, Alvin, he did a sale in LA of 2400. That was, if you see over here, it's 1400 plus 1000. So at the same time, if you see the result of pivot query, it will be somehow look like this. It will return you the same results but a cross-tab report. So if you see over here, I implemented a pivot query on the same table, and it gives you Alvin, he did 1380 in Boston. And if you see over here, Alvin, he did 1380 in Boston. Okay, before we continue and implement this in SQL Server, let me just explain you a structure of pivot query. Let's go. If you see over here, the first column will always be a non-pivoted column, and then you have to define your pivoted columns, and it depends on your data. It can be 3, 4, 5. In our case, it will be 4, like Boston, Seattle, LA, and the fourth city. We'll see the implementation time. Then we have a slack query that produces a data for these pivoted columns, and then we have a pivot operator. Inside pivot operator, the first thing will be an aggregation function that can be sum, count, or average as per your requirement. Then you have to mention the column that contains the values that will become a column headers in a cross tab. And then again we have to mention all that pivoted columns, and it must be in the same order of what we mentioned in the first over here in the first select query. So the order over here will be the same over here. So let's implement this in SQL Server. Let me just open my SQL Server. Let me open a blank editor, and I will type a query over here. Let's type select static from view sales. So what it will return, it will just return us all the records in a tabular form. Let's apply a pivot on this table. Select. First will be a non-pivoted column, that will be sales person in our case, comma. Then we have to mention all the pivoted columns. So in our case, it will be Chicago, Seattle, Boston, and LA. So we will just write down over here Chicago, Seattle, Boston, and LA. From then over here we have to write down a select query that will produce a data for these pivoted columns, and that will be select sales. All the columns we have to mention that will be used: salesperson, comma, city, and sale amount from view sales. And we'll mention the alias name as, like, you can just write anything, QRY. Then we will have a pivot operator over here, and inside pivot operator, the first thing will be the aggregate function. In our case, it will be sum. We need a sum of sale amount for, we will mention over here, city in. So as earlier mentioned, that you have to write down all the pivoted columns again in the same sequence. So it will be Chicago, Seattle, Boston, and LA as PVT. So if you just select this, if you just execute, it will show you two queries, as already we have a view sales query over here. And let's select this and execute it again. So if you see over here, our query has generated a cross tab report where we have a salesperson on the left, Alvin, Amanda, and Eric, and their sales in the particular cities for all three. That's it for today, and thank you for listening and watching our tutorial. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for more videos and lectures. Thank you.